have you ever seen so this was after the roast. I'm flipping around, have a little bourbon in hand, and pretty much everything's over for the night. And I hit Origin Sports. Have you seen the Origin Sports channel?
I've never even heard of it. I probably have it on something, but no, I don't know what that is.
So it's a channel that has popped onto my DirecTV stream channels. So I get I'm a cord cutter, but I get DirecTV stream as quote unquote cable. It's just a lot cheaper.
That's what your
ESPN and all that.
You get their programming essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So they've got a bunch of channels on there. One of the new channels is called Origin Sports, and it's oddly fascinating because all it does is play old football and basketball games. I'm sure there are other sports on there. I haven't checked it enough to find out. Every time I've flipped on it or seen on the guide, it shows it's got old football or basketball games, and then when it goes to breaks, it doesn't even have commercials. It just gives you aerial shots of stadiums all around the country, which is actually mesmerizing in and of itself. So I watched one. I told you guys I watched one a couple weeks ago. It was the Kansas-Syracuse National Championship game in the NCAA tournament when Carmelo Anthony beat Nick Collison and Kirk Heinrich and those guys. And it's a really fun thing to go back and watch depending on the game, particularly if you've seen the game in the first place, because you have a memory of what happened in that game, but it is nothing like what actually happened in that game. And it's really a fun exercise to go back and watch some of these games, and they're condensed versions of the games, but they show you most of the plays. And you can sit and watch and go, oh my God, I don't remember that happening, or I don't remember that happening, or my God, how bad was that guy? Well, last night they had all that said on the guide was Herbert versus Wisconsin. It was the Rose Bowl from 2020 where Oregon played Wisconsin, and it was the Justin Herbert game where Mario Cristobal finally let him run.
Herbert ran for 3 touchdowns? Is that right?
3 tutties.
Yeah.
Yes, and we all remember that. I remember that. I remember him running for at least 2, if not 3 tutties. Okay. But when you go back and watch that game, first of all, I had to go look it up. Wisconsin, that team had 3 losses. They were coached by Paul Chryst, and their quarterback was a kid by the name of Jack Cohn. Look, I remember vividly watching that Rose Bowl, going, man, this is great to win the Rose Bowl. I'm really happy for Oregon. But when you watch it back, you go, oh my God, what a struggle that was. I don't remember any of that from the first time watching it. Herbert's receiver, first of all, watching that game back, Herbert's receivers dropped everything.
They were kind of terrible at the end for him, right?
Everything. And they only had, did you know that Oregon only had, well, no, I'll ask you, how many yards of offense did Oregon have in that game?
Oh, not a lot, because I think... Ooh.
Final score, 28-27.
Total offense? Let's go 286.
204.
Jeez.
Dude, they had Justin Herbert at quarterback against Jack Cohn, and Jack Cohn outplayed, well, he didn't outplay, he threw for more yards than Justin Herbert. And here's the other thing. You know how many yards rushing Herbert had in that game? Because
more than he had passing.
It's known as the game where Herbert finally they let him run, and that was finally the difference.
Was it not that many?
He had 29.
He had like one long first down, then a couple touchdown runs, right?
Yeah, he had one long touchdown run for 30.
There you go.
And then he had a 4 and a 5 yard touchdown run, and then maybe some sacks or negative plays. But yeah, they had. I mean, it just shouldn't have been that hard. Yet, what I remember about that game is how great that game was, because it really was an exciting game. They had the scoop and score fumble for Brady Breeze.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like, I don't remember it that vividly either, but it's like a good bad game or a bad good game or something like that.
It was a great bad game.
Yeah, it's not like one of those like classic championships where you're watching 2 of the best like trade haymakers. It's like you're watching 2 teams try to like plod along and just do a little bit not as bad as the other.
Yeah, I guess I just, and you guys being Duck fans maybe remember this better than I do. I don't remember Oregon's offense being that bad. I mean, I knew that we'd been talking about, Cristobal and who's the offensive coordinator? Was it Arroyo at that time? And them kind of holding Justin Herbert back. And now looking at Justin Herbert in the NFL, you go, oh my God, like, how did they not let that guy sling it all over the field? Well, he kind of did. His receivers were terrible. They were dropping everything. And Cristobal, his philosophy was, sort of ground and pound and he's very conservative. So it wasn't the best fit, but man, I'd forgotten how tough they were to watch. But that was a great game. Wisconsin had I think a kick return. It was like a 100-yard kick return for a touchdown too. But it also reminded me how far Oregon's uniforms have come, because those were atrocious. Those were back in the crooked number days.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long ago. But
yeah, because there have been, they change their numbers or they do a full uniform turnover every 3 years because they want to be able to market that you can come to Oregon and then you can end up playing in a jersey that you yourself can contribute to designing. That's part of the deal. But so that iteration, those numbers were large and robotic and awful, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the color was ugly. They've come a long way. Also, just random, but I was looking at that game, and it was the 2020 Rose Bowl. So it was 2019 season, but the game was played in January 2020, New Year's Day 2020. So most likely a giant super spreader event, because that was right before COVID.
Yeah.
At any rate, as this texter puts it, and he is exactly right, on the Vancouver Ford text line, the quality of play from those Cristobal teams were painful to watch and are even tougher to watch when compared to now. And that's exactly right. It's real. And I remember all the criticism of the offense with Cristobal and everything. But man, now that we've seen how good Justin Herbert is in the NFL, and you compare it to how the Ducks have played since Cristobal left, it really is shocking how awful that was.
That was the Oregon
and yet
fans'
they won
constant
the Rose Bowl.
gripe, though, was that you're able to get all these dudes and all these guys who are supposed to be able to unleash hell on their opponents, and you just don't get as much as you should. They never achieve their full potential as far as just their football output.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was crazy. And that's, if you have the Origin Sports channel, keep an eye on games. Like, it's just totally random stuff. One was Drew Brees against, it was college. Purdue was playing somebody, I don't know. They just show totally random things. But it's actually really cool if it's a game you've seen before to go back and watch it and see how your view has changed of it when you rewatch it and how much you misremember. But anyway, I was thinking about Herbert. And, that guy is going to could end up going down as the most accomplished quarterback ever out of the University of Oregon or the state of Oregon. You have Joey, you have Mariotto, you have Fouts, Achille, number 1 draft pick. We all know who they are, but, if Herbert stays healthy, is he not going to have the best numbers of all? The only guy that would be comparable would be Fouts, right?
Yeah,
in the NFL?
I think that's the only person left for Justin to probably surpass.
But where would he end up? Where would Herbert? Where will he end up in the pantheon of Duck quarterbacks?
Lower than most of those guys.
Yeah.
Because of the restraints that Cristobal had on him, it seems.
Because his college career wasn't that. It just wasn't.
It wasn't as impressive as his talent level.
Yeah, because they were 4-8. Because they show him Tom Rinaldi's out there interviewing him after the game, and he's crying. And he's like, oh, my God, 4-8 to this is just unbelievable. And he's balling. I'm like, oh, my God, I forgot they were 4-8. He was there with Helfrich, right?
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, because he had 3 different head coaches in his time there. And I think he had 4 different offensive coordinators in his time there.
So he just kind of gets, as great as he is in the NFL, and he's excellent, he just kind of, his Oregon career kind of gets lost in the shuffle. He doesn't have that big moment, even though he won the Rose Bowl. Joey's moment winning that Fiesta Bowl is way bigger.
Oh, that was
that.
Because that was also like that wasn't a matchup like this. That was a 2 versus 4, right? Against Colorado in the Fiesta.
2 versus 4,
like ranking.
Yeah, because they thought that Oregon should be playing in the championship game, and they would have played Miami. And then Mariota, he's probably number 1 in the pantheon of Oregon quarterbacks because...
Well, the fact he won a Heisman by a landslide.
And then he played in
and played in
almost won him a title.
Mm-hmm.
But So he's probably number one just based on his Oregon career. But Justin Herbert could end up being the most accomplished of all of them by a lot.
Yeah.
And still is just maybe it's his quiet nature or how his career played out with the different coaches and in the offenses. But he, I don't know. It's just weird, his place in Oregon history based on all that stuff.
Well, and it's strange when you get to see it exactly as it played out through the identical lens without just kind of the warping of how your memory recollects everything happening, and you get to see it in its true form again. You're like, whoa, it really was like that.
Yeah. If you could go back and watch one Oregon game, if Origin Sports was going to play one past Oregon game and you could watch it, which one would you want to rewatch?
I don't think it's that close. I think it's the 21-3 comeback erased against Jim Harbaugh's Stanford team. That game was an absolute party. It looked like...
Was that at Autzen?
It was at Autzen, and they were losing 21-3 after the first quarter, and Stanford was a top 25 team. They might have been top 15 or top 10, and things were looking horrible, and that was like... I think that was like the peak Chip Kelly. Like, it doesn't matter how many points you score on us. Our offense can take anybody over. And I just remember that one being absolutely magical. I mean, you also have, I would say, and I've seen it a couple times since I used to have it on my DVR, but the Oregon-Wisconsin Rose Bowl that Russell Wilson couldn't get the spike off. That was like a, 47-45 game or something like that.
Great game.
DeAnthony Thomas went nuts in that one, and it went all the way down to the wire with Russ Wilson. I mean, that's an all-timer for me as well.
You know what I'd like to watch is I'd like to go back and watch the entire game of the Oregon-Oklahoma fumble.
Yeah. I've seen that on like ESPN Classic before.
Yeah, because it was, I remember it being, say again, this is, in my head, that was a great game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the score, but I remember obviously I'm talking about the play where Oregon miraculously comes out with the fumble.
Yeah, or didn't.
No, they didn't at all.
Because Oklahoma player's holding it after the whole thing.
That just to go back and watch that whole, because that was a huge game at the time. I remember that.
Oh yeah,
at Autzen, and Oklahoma coming into town was a big deal.
Adrian Peterson was their running back.
Yeah, dude, that's.
I think Adrian Peterson and Jonathan Stewart ran for like a combined 325 yards that day, or 350, something like that. Like Peterson, I think, went for over 200, and Stewart went over 150.
Do you remember the final score? Because I don't.
Boy.
But I remember it being a good game.
Well, it was 34-33, I think.
Really?
Is that right?
You're right.
Yeah.
September 16, 2006.
Oregon was down 13.
Yep.
Dixon hit Brian Pasinger to bring it to within 6.
Oh
Then you have the onside kick. Then you get another touchdown, and then Blair Phillips blocks the field goal at the end to steal the victory.
You said they were down how many?
13. Well, I know when like they were down 13 in the last 2 minutes or whatever it was.
It was 33-20.
Yeah.
With 3 minutes left.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was at that game. I was a sophomore that year.
Oh.
And I was actually interning for the Oregon athletic department, so I was helping usher recruits around for that game. And part of the deal is for NCAA rules, you couldn't allow recruits on the field during the game. They could be there up until about 10 minutes before kickoff, and then they could be there as soon as the clock hit 0, but not in between. And so usually the fastest way to get them back to the locker room to see the postgame speech was via the field. But if you have a field storming situation, wrangling like 20 recruits who are there on official visits is near impossible. So we were trying to herd cats, getting these kids into the locker room to see Bellatti's postgame speech after this like epic win.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I mean, at this stage of Oregon's football growth, we could do a whole segment on favorite or best games because they've piled up now. There are a lot of great. The Colorado Fiesta Bowl win, they blew them out, but that was amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, it all started with Kenny Wheaton.
Yep.
But, you go just in the last 10, 15 years, there's a lot of really memorable games. The win at Michigan.
Well, the fake Statue of Liberty, that was incredible. People mentioning here the Rose Bowl win over the semifinal game against Jameis Winston, giving Jameis Winston his first loss in college, or his only loss in college, when you just blasted Florida State.
The only thing I remember they kicked the crap out of him. The only thing I remember about that game is they snapped it over Winston's head, right?
It wasn't even that they snapped it over. Did he pick it up? Because I remember him backpedaling and he fell over and dropped the ball.
Maybe that's what it was.
But yeah, our mind's eye are seeing the same thing.
Yeah. All right. Text the Vancouver Fort text line, if you wish.
Ooh, the USC Oregon Halloween night game. That was a good one.
Classic.
It's a really good one.
And Oregon State's got some big games too.
There have been some really good Civil Wars. There were a couple like Civil Wars for the Roses. The one that was at Autzen where Jeremiah Mazzoli needed like a 4th and 3 to send Oregon to the Rose Bowl and to keep Oregon State out. Whoever was winning that game won the whole thing, and it came down to the last play.
Well, I remember a lot of Oregon State USC games. That were wild.
Yeah,
the Reggie Bush in the fog and all that. All right. Well, anyway, I saw that on Origin Sports and. Justin Herbert in that Rose Bowl, and that game was terrible. Well, it was a good game. It was a fun game.
But it wasn't great football.
Like, here's bottom line, don't ever go back and watch Mario Cristobal's offenses at Oregon. Jesus. Even with an NFL prototype quarterback.
Sometimes they could abuse people in the run game, but even that got painfully stale and vanilla.
Right.